Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this this session here called Shaping our attractive and sustainable spaces for tomorrow's passengers. So this is our second in the sustainable mobility themed sessions of the IRS. And we're going to be talking really spotlight on stations and the importance of stations in sustainable mobility. So I'm going to now introduce a really fantastic panel that we've got here for you today. My name is Lucy Anderton. I'll be moderating today. I work for UIC, which is the International Union of Railways, and I lead on sustainability. Seconded from Network Rail, which is the UK infrastructure managers. So very honoured to be moderating today this really exciting panel. I'll introduce them now at the beginning. So first, I'll introduce Emily Hergo, and she's going to be our first speaker today. Emily works for AREP, and she's an architect and an engineer, and she's Director of Environment and Digital at AREP, which is a multidisciplinary architecture practice, which is a subsidiary of SNCF, Gare and Connexion, here in France. And then our second speaker today will be Johan Bowen. And Johan is the founder of Green Furniture Concepts. And so he's the creative director for Green Furniture Concepts and based in Malmo in Sweden, living near the coastline apparently, and actually an avid windsurfer. So really living the dream for us. And Johan is the leading expert in sustainable design and has really created seating environments for both airports and train stations in all of the continents in the world, apart from Antarctica, which is his next challenge, a big challenge. But he has a mandate to really around to place passenger satisfaction at the forefront and centre of terminal design. And Johan and his team, with his architects and his facility managers, are really there to look at improving passenger flow and how to increase revenues in food courts and in retail areas within our terminals. And then I'm going to introduce in our panel discussion two more experts on stations, and they're two people actually that are really well involved in the UIC. Very pleased that they're part of the UIC station sector, which is a group that pulls together enthusiasts and experts around stations across our membership in the UIC. And Artur Ferjud is from PKP, our Polish state railways. And Arthur is the head of Department for Ecological and Passenger Solutions at the Office of Research, Development and Digitalisation. So all things innovation and research and development for PKP. And he's also the chair of the Station Managers Global Group for UIC, as well as the chair for the Small Stations Working Group and the Station and Urban Design Working Group. So really active in that space. And then Paul van Donnik is our vice chairman of the UIC Station Managers Global Group, and also his daytime job, of course, is at Jernhusen, where he is the strategy and business development lead, and so he focuses on just how safe and welcoming and attractive stations can be, and how that can contribute to more people choosing sustainable mobility solutions. So that's our fantastic team. I think you can see we're going to have a really interesting debate today. But before I hand over to our first speaker, Emily, I'm going to set the scene a little bit and do a few opening thoughts. So if we could have my opening slides then, please. Thank you. I'll just take it to the beginning. So, as I say, this session's all about shaping attractive and sustainable spaces for tomorrow's passengers. And really, it's going to be a session that will really debate the vision of what a sustainable station really is for us. And we'll consider how our current stations are and how they can really contribute to sustainable mobility systems. And it will also look at our future stations and the importance of low carbon and universal design when we're creating and imagining our new stations as well. And actually, it's really exciting to be thinking about stations and putting the spotlight on stations, because perhaps they've been a little bit forgotten in the whole railway systems thinking. If we think about it, if we think about sustainable rail, we might have pictures of hydrogen trains in our mind, or think about electrification and low carbon travel. But actually, the stations are the shop window for our railways. They're really actually not just a place where you can get on or off a train, but they're actually a key part of a city and a community. And in fact, and so today we're going to be really thinking about how we can create those fantastic destination stations that are attractive and sustainable, but also how do we work that to our smaller stations, that are our rural places as well. And how do we make them resource efficient, inclusive, as well as real flexible public spaces? So let's just think more perhaps about what we mean by the shop window piece. To me, the station is that first impression of our railway journey. It's that first experience and the start of a railway journey. So it really sets the scene and sets the experience that a passenger will have. And not only that, in reverse, it's the first impression that you have of a city or a town as well. So it can really set the scene of your day as you arrive into this new city. Is it a really attractive and exciting and pleasant place and a welcoming place as you arrive? So it's really, again, that shop window to a city or a town, as well as that shop window to a railway experience as well. So it's really important, actually, to make sure that that passengers and users of those stations really feel welcome, feel included, feel safe and secure, but also really feel, yes, I'm making a really sustainable travel choice today by using rail. So yeah, I think that's kind of my opening thought, and just also to remind ourselves really that they're not just a station where we get on and off a train, but actually they're also a place of work, they're a place to shop, they're a place to eat. And in fact, even those days, you can have a drink of champagne in a train station. So they're really more than just that transport hub. And a few more thoughts. So actually, a train station is not an island. It's a public space that's part of its community. It's part of a city or a town. And when you invest in your train station, it can really be a catalyst for regeneration and area transformation. So it can really sort of have that ripple effect into the whole city or town, into the public spaces and realm all around it, and the businesses and the people and the communities that live around it. So it can really have a massive impact on a whole area. It's a public space. So how do we make sure that it's inclusive and safe and welcoming? But also it's a sustainable mobility hub. So actually, how do we make it really easy for people to make that onward journey travel choices that are sustainable, that are active, that are using public transport, that are low emission transport? So how do we make that connection for people to make an easy onward journey, or indeed arrive at the station in the most sustainable way? So that's all about multimodality. And also, let's think about the experience within that station. Is it a destination in itself? Is it a place that is a really pleasant customer experience? But as well as that, it's a big energy user, actually. At the end of the day, it's a building. So how do we create both new and modernize existing buildings for a decarbonized world? How do we make it energy efficient and resource efficient? It's also, there's lots of waste management that happens in a station. And how do we help our tenants the retailers, the hospitality organisations within our stations to help bring through circular economy and really clever waste management solutions, as well as our passengers. How do we help our passengers to recycle and to reuse? Many of our passengers and our retailers would like to reduce their single-use plastic. So how do we, as a railway, support that and make that easy for that move towards more circular economy and reduction of single-use plastic? But it's also we're owners and looking after built heritage. Some of the fantastic buildings and architecture of historic prominence is on our railway infrastructure. So how do we look after our historic buildings, but while at the same time modernising them for future use so they're still accessible, they're still energy efficient? But it's a very varied estate. And as I say, we've got right down to that unmanned, unstaffed rural stops where there's barely even a bus shelter at it, right down to those iconic palatial, fabulous destination terminal stations as well. So how do we sort of reconcile that and make sure that they're all part of a sustainable mobility system? So, and I'm going to be super quick, really, because what I want to do is be as quick as possible to pass over to our fabulous panel. And so I'm going to conclude my opening thoughts there, and I'm going to pass over to Emily. But as I do that, as you can see, a fantastic poll has popped up. So if you've got now 30 seconds to answer this question, what percentage of greenhouse gas emissions are building and transport sectors together accountable for? So how much do you think that really accounts for? Is it 30%, 50%, or perhaps 70% of all of the greenhouse gas emissions? Okay, if you could submit your question, submit your answers, and they're still that's still open, I think. And then as soon as it is closed, we'll be able to look at the results. And it's closed. So if you look at your closed sections in the polls, you can see now that there's a reasonably clear winner is C. Now, I don't know, I'm hoping that's the right answer, Emily, if you can help us to understand.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Indeed, yes, I'll be developing on that during the presentation. So yes, I'm Emily Horgot. I'm head of environment and digital at Arup, multidisciplinary architecture practice. And we're working for all kinds of mobility places, but in particular stations, railway stations, for our mother company, SNCF Gare et Connexion, Hubs and Connections. And I'm very happy to be with you today and to elaborate with concrete examples from our project on how we can shape attractive and sustainable spaces for passengers. So a quick introduction to begin with. So why do we care at all about building sustainable stations? Of course, it's quite clear why we would like to build attractive places, but so what's behind this sustainable idea? Well, we know climate is changing, so this is a very visual illustration of this effect due to our actions, anthropogenic actions. And we see clearly that something is going on with the red bars at the end. And by the way, this might explain why we're talking a bit more about the topic these days, as there's a clear acceleration. A second thing also, which is as important, I guess, is here you see an illustration of what we call peak oil. So we know that we're using a huge amount of resources and in particular non-renewable resources. So oil is one of them. This is taken from quite a serious Norwegian study, and it illustrates peak oil at some time around 2035. But in fact, there are other types of non-renewable resources, and we can talk even about a peak everything, be it sand, be it metals. So that's another topic to bear in mind. And lastly, so you might have seen this cartoon sometime last year. And when you saw it, maybe you saw only the first two waves. So be sure to wash your hands and all will be well. But thing is, there might be another hurdle on our way. Biodiversity collapse obviously is another issue, and depicted here as even bigger. Obviously, if nature is not able to fulfill the duties we've been counting on since, in fact, the beginning of our journey on Earth, that might be a serious trouble. So yes, as a railway stations designer, we stand at the conjunction of construction and transport sectors. And both of them, in fact, account for 50% of total greenhouse gas emissions, which means that we hold a great responsibility, but also we hold power to act on this challenge. We know also that construction is eating lots of resources, and we know that artificialization is obviously a major cause of biodiversity loss. So what do we do with this? At AREP, we've developed this approach because energy, matter, carbon, climate, biodiversity are the essentials we are designing with. This is a method that allows us to question projects throughout the design from the very early phases, and to also measure the environmental performance of our projects. And so I'll be happy to drive you through a few examples following this classification taken from concrete experience. And also the point is to show how this approach is also adding to the attractiveness of spaces. So we begin with energy. So with energy, you have two levers. The first one, obviously, is decreasing the total energy consumption of the building, but also adding, making sure that you add local ways to produce energy, renewable energy. So here we see that there's a passageway that is directly lit with natural light. So that decreases obviously the need for electricity for lighting. And also we've added on, you only see the shadows here, but we've added power solar panels that create quite a lot of energy, in fact, for the station. So this is happening at Besançon TGV in the east of France. And so this picture quite well depicts both natural light that makes also this space more agreeable, and solar energy. As it comes for matter, so obviously we believe that reuse is a key lever to first try to not consume new material. And here the picture you see is in Saint-Denis, so it's a mass transit station that's undergoing massive transformation. And we've used metal curtains that were taken down just a few kilometers away, and they have also some graphical qualities. And so we've reused them to create the temporary access to the station during the works. Obviously, when you do need to employ new material, geo and bio-sourced materials are to be preferred. So here an example of a timber frame and ceiling from Meuse TGV. So that's a high-speed station, again in the east of France. So we also want to, going to carbon, we want to master the embodied carbon of our projects, and starting from the very early phases. So in detail phases, you have all kinds of tools that already exist on the market that allows you to make this estimate. Basically, you multiply the quantity of products you use by the carbon intensity of those products, and you obtain the result. But in early phases, you do not know precisely which products you're going to use. So somehow you need to complete the data of the designer to be able to build these estimates. And it has also obviously a margin of error, but this will allow you to discriminate between various possibilities in your project. So this is what we are building, and it's supposed also this is to be built with the experience of past projects and the fact that you're able to decompose the project into macro sub-elements that you gain reference values for. So as I said, climate is changing, and we already know that no matter what we do, the climate in 2050 will be different from the one we know today. So in this example, we wanted to bath the project into the 2050 climate, because to make sure that the project that we will produce will not be obsolete by then. And obviously what we saw is that there was a need to take additional measure for summer comfort in this hall. So that's Paris Austerlitz, so Paris, a major station. And yes, so we did the perceived comfort studies with this projected climate that we unfortunately already know. So finally, biodiversity. In this example, we wanted to, so this is a new station, Nîmes TGV, a new high-speed station that was opened in 2019. And this station was built on a site where many trees were already present. So we wanted to keep as many trees as we could. So that's about 300 that were preserved. And in fact, those trees create a very specific sense of space. And they also accompany passengers on their travel to the station. And it also, in fact, creates new spaces for waiting. For waiting, very agreeable in the summer, and they're very close to the station as you see here. And finally, as for energy, maybe the best square meters are the one that you do not need to build. And this is something very important, making sure that the spaces you have are as intensely used as they can. So this is a great example from Juvisy-sur-Orge. It's one of the biggest stations. It's an everyday station in the Parisian area. And here, through a large-scale signage, we were able to manage more efficiently passenger flow, so that with the same space, in fact, you can have more capacity, not by adding square meters, but just by making sure that all spaces are used very intensely. So, as you said, Lucy, obviously it's we can take part into this challenge just by making sure that we attract people to the train rather than to less virtuous modes of transport. But we believe that sustainability has to be coherent. It's on all its declinations, and the stations, the buildings themselves should definitely take part. So that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Emily. It was really, really interesting. And I think having that that structure that you've got there in the, I think is it 5 different sort of sections is really helpful, I think, to sort of be able to sort of really check against yourself. So it's really helpful, and I think that was a real good focus on environmental sustainability, especially, wasn't it, today, and how you can really embed that into the design process and find those kind of levers for designers, so that they can use on their projects to create one of the sustainable building that can be used in a sustainable way. So really, really helpful. Thank you. And so next I'm going to move to like a slightly more sort of social and human focused kind of presentation from Johan Bohn. He's going to be talking more about how stations can really communicate to people about the sustainability of rail, if you like. So I'll welcome now to the stage, but first we're going to do your poll as well, aren't we, Johan? So should be appearing shortly on the screen if you could partake in Johan's poll. So yeah, you have 30 seconds here to answer. Putting passengers' satisfaction first. So when you're putting passengers' satisfaction the first, what's the most important thing? What's the most important thing for passenger satisfaction? Is it comfortable seating? Is it charging features? Is it privacy for in a room as well as a family? Is it a sustainable design? Is it enjoyable area to sit, or is it increased seating capacity? So you can see a seating focus here, shall we say? But which do you think is sort of the biggest factor when it comes to passenger satisfaction when relaxing in the station space, shall we say? So I think if we can see now, the poll is in, and it looks like enjoyment is the most popular answer there, Johan. So that's interesting, isn't it? About enjoying sitting down. I love sitting down, certainly. So I'll hand over to you now, Johan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucy, and I'm so happy to see also that we share this vision of an enjoyable area to sit. Really, like you said, Lucy, in your opening, stations are the shop window of the railways. Here is what encounters us. Here is what represents the sustainable way of traveling, which is rail. And here is where we arrive at our destination. And really, this is where the fun begins, or should begin. So shaping attractive and sustainable space for tomorrow's passenger. I'll hang around that a little bit, and starting with the past, started with the great era of railways when it all started. And here you can see the Grand Central Terminal in New York, showing really, here is where the fun begins. Here is where the adventure starts. And this is the way of traveling. And this is how they took care of their passengers waiting. This is the waiting room of the Grand Central Terminal. And as you can see, this is a luxurious way of traveling, and really time and money is spent in making it enjoyable. And it sure was, I think, and the start of the adventure. And they didn't forget about the business involved either at these times. This is Nottingham Victoria Station, and you can see the big signs of the business being advertised: refreshment rooms, dining rooms. The telegraph was a big central activity and a way of earning money for the stations as well. And I think this is something to find our way back to again as well. Making stations really a center of society, a center of where you can find the things, the daily things you need, and where you can get good coffee and a good bite to eat on the journey, or just passing by the stations in town. So I will move on to showing a little bit of the development since. I think we've taken since an operational way of looking at things. So we want to streamline and optimize and make it simple to run a station. Obviously, as crowds go up, as traveling, there are more people. We need to accommodate all these people. But have we then maybe forgotten about that nice factor, about that start of the journey? And maybe a hard environment like this does not really bring out the best in people. Maybe it also makes people hard. And I think that the speaking about vandalism and the deterioration of and wear and tear on places like this, I don't think it has decreased just by introducing hard and very durable, obviously, on the look, pieces of furniture and constructions like this. I think that really making people hard will have also implied that vandalism hasn't gone down, even though it's harder to vandalize. So I'll come back to that a little bit, showing a few more examples. This one was London Bridge, how it looked just a few years ago. There's been a big change, I can tell you. London Bridge being a new and modern station. Here is London Victoria Station, old classic, but maybe forgotten as a symbol of that great adventure for a while. And it looked like this a few years ago. And coming back to then what is possible to do in places like this. And I think that we may have forgotten how places can be developed in a way that is actually durable and that resists to possible vandalism or to the wear and tear of a lot of people. So this is England's or Britain's busiest station, London Waterloo. This picture was taken during the nighttime installation of new seating at the station. And you can see behind what it is replacing. That seating is not there anymore. And you could kind of compare what architectural elements in that station, just like the architectural furniture that you see here, can do to a place. And how it can bring in warmth, nature, and human feeling to that place. I think it shouldn't be underestimated, really. And I'll show you a little bit of how it works, which factors that bring this out. Because we really want to reclaim and revitalize these stations. We want to make them nice places again. Because then you also get that feeling of safety that is maybe more needed now than ever before during COVID times. How will it be to return to traveling? Is it safe? Can I feel secure? And how can we then attract people and services? Yes, by making a nice place, these people will be attracted. People will come for a cup of coffee before the train leaves, instead of having that coffee at home or in town before and then rushing off to the train just in time. And this is really, again, the shop window of sustainability as well. So here the journey starts. Here we have to take that sustainable interest of our passengers seriously and show that we are acting the whole way and welcome them to a sustainable place. And I'll show you, this is really good business. This pays back. It has a really short return on investment just by bringing in people and having them take a cup of coffee, buy something on the way, or even stay for dinner. So looking at what has happened to these places then, here is again London Bridge Station. That was changed just not only 2 years ago, not even 2 years ago. And the change is remarkable. It had already a wooden ceiling, a wooden touch to it above, but this now all comes together and the natural materials bring in life to that place. London Victoria has the same kind of architectural seating into it, and it has become a much more enjoyable place to stay. Actually, Network Rail, owning these stations, they polled for satisfaction before and after this change was done, and it was below 30% satisfaction of waiting areas before, and it raised to 80%. So it's really a remarkable difference and worth so much to the stations and the whole environment of traveling on rail. So this place feels nice. This is what we want to achieve, right? Nature in that building. And I'll bring you a little bit of architectural thinking into this. So if you can make things in scale and in line with your building, you will have an impact. You can use interior landscaping like you see in the bottom left. You can create that wow feeling by size adapted to the building. And wowed passenger, here's a reference from the airport industry. Airport Council International show that wowed passengers are more satisfied, but also more loyal and receptive. And that may be receptive to COVID information, that may also be receptive to marketing information. So this is downright money for the concessions at the station. And biophilic design, using nature in the design, natural materials, natural shapes, has proven to generate well-being. You can have this by the touch and feel, but it also gives acoustic properties that brings down the echo and the noise on the place, which is downright well-being as well. And it increases the place connectivity to people. They can feel that this place represents something for them. It's a part of their lives. And wow, let's go sit under that tree, or meet you under the tree is very powerful. And on sustainability then, if what you have in the station, if the stations can communicate sustainability, just like the trains, people are feeling you take them seriously. This can be done by circular materials and designs. And we've seen also circular business models where furniture is rented out, or a function is being rented out for the time that it's used, and so that it can change over time and change while the needs change, and they will. You obviously need to have long-lasting products, so proven long life, proven maintainability. And climate-wise, climate positive, climate neutral products will not contribute in a bad way. And there is a story about all this to tell to your passengers. So the long lasting, using nature also there. Instead of lacquering wood, lacquer will be scratched and deteriorate over time. We found that you can use wax. It's found from the flooring industry. Denmark, Copenhagen Airport, for example, has this, where you can fill in scratches and maintain it as good as new over time. Have designs where you also can change a little part if it's broken, not having to change that whole piece of furniture. Also limiting the downtime of things, very important. And getting that passenger satisfaction, as I told there, Victoria Station from 23 to 80%. And really bringing down the pace, making people breathe and feel that, oh, I have time. And they'll lift their view and they'll see that, wow, I'll go have a coffee before the train leaves. And that's where business comes. So somebody asked me to show or come up with a retail effect formula for this. And looking at shopping malls, they've seen into shopping malls in Britain, 5 minutes more dwell time means 5% more retail, which is big business. And from the airports, 1% satisfaction raise can mean as much as 1.5% more retail. And if you then can raise the satisfaction by 10, 20, 30%, you can see the kind of money that generates. And the retail formula then, satisfaction times dwell time. Keep people satisfied, keep people there because they want to be there. And this is retail and food and beverage, really. So to finalize, place-making station investments do pay off very quickly, not only as the window to the means of travel, but really to the place itself, the retail and cafes and restaurants in there. Makes a safe place, really physically makes it safe, not only a feeling of safety, but brings it softer, turns vandals into more friendly behavior, and having an easy way of maintaining things in a good shape. It's a natural resistance. I think the shop window metaphor is really good there, because there's also the broken window metaphor, right? If there is a broken window, it's very easy to throw the next stone. But if there is no broken window, if the area looks good, it will be kept good and with respect. And this all very good return on investment. So with an image of Stockholm Central Station, which I had the nice opportunity of designing this space 8 years ago, and designed this piece of furniture that has then, like Lucy said, spread over the world afterwards. I'll finish my little session here, and it will be really nice to talk to you all in the panel and seeing your questions after this. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan. It's really, really interesting. And that kind of creative view of how to tackle vandalism, instead of, just making things harder and more, easy to clean and to keep painting over or whatever it is. It's really nice to sort of take that softer, more creative view to tackling problem, the kind of challenges that many of our attendees will be dealing with, So it's,
it really works. We've seen so little vandalism on the stations we have furnished. So even though it should be easier to vandalize them, maybe it's less.
Really interesting.
Really nice people.
Yeah, and just taking that placemaking view, I think, is really nice, and sort of thinking about our public spaces as public realm and as places to that real feeling of what is the design and what is the feeling that we want people to have when we go into space is sort of a really nice way to start thinking about our stations, rather than being a very functional, hard, operational kind of view that perhaps we've taken in the recent decades. So really nice vision, I think. So thank you, Johan. Really interesting. So it's actually now time to sort of introduce the full panel. So if all panel can open your cameras, please. So we should all be visible. Thank you. And yeah, if any of the attendees would like to put any questions, there's a Q&A box there. So please feel free to ask any questions to our panel. But just to kick it off, I'm going to go to you, please, Artur, if that's okay. If you could perhaps tell us a little bit about reaction perhaps to some things that have been said already today, and to tell us what your vision is for a sustainable station. How would you describe a sustainable station from your point of view?
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So my vision of sustainable station is very close to this, which show us in she's presentation, Emily. Maybe because my background is a designer, public realm designer. I was almost 20 years. But of course, I agree. Sustainable station should be balanced and consistent station with holistic approach. It's very, very, very important. That's why I love this aspect which show us Emily. Energy, of course, production, optimum energy use, and consumption, energy, optimum energy use, and production like a prosumer. Matter, of course, circular economy, reuse, and reducing carbon footprint. We should go to our ambition should to be have climate neutral station, and climate. In terms of climate, we should reduce heat island by design tools, and we should conduct clever water management. I mean rainwater and tap water. and it's very important. And biodiversity is a story about health. If we will have biodiversity in surrounding the station, people will healthy. It's very, very, very important. But it's not only this aspect, because now I work for railways. That's why I will add something from railways. Station is a part of constructions. Almost 40% construction sector was responsible on greenhouse gas emissions. It's true. We can have a climate neutral station. That's why we should reduce footprint. The second part is station is a part of transport. We should create a station as the hard multimodal transport. It's true, but we can achieve this only cooperate, not competing with other mode of public transport. It's very important to invite other mode of public transport to be part of our station. To find the one spot for our activities. This is about transport. Of course, transport is part of sustainable mobility. And in this context, of course, we have two roles, like a transport hub, and we create with station a local center. It's important because in this aspect we can prepare the place when people can make most daily errands in the 15 minutes walk walking radius. But of course, it little bit reduce need of mobility, but it's good. And on the second hand, station create new opportunity for local centers, because how to say, building station is a first door to the city, and the surrounding of the station is like a living room for the cities. We create our living room cozy and feel. We would like to feel nice. This is the way for sustainable station too. And the last thing, it's a sustainable station is its social role. We should prepare, offer, and invite local community to co-create this space. And if we will have not only guests, we will co-creators with local community, the station will live, with a livable place. Sorry. And the last aspect, maybe this aspect not was in presentation, but it's important aspect, digitalization. Because if we will use digital twin of our station in the future, we can testing practical solution without costly mistakes. We can bring more value from existing data and forecasting some scenarios. It will be very important for sustainable station. It's my point of view.
Thank you, Artur. That's really interesting insights, and I really like that idea of co-creation with local community, and to really go beyond just sort of informing or consulting, but really partnering with local community and stakeholders in creating that attractive and sustainable space. I think it's bound to be more successful with the involvement of community. Absolutely. So thank you for that really helpful point to build on those that have been made already. And so I'll ask the same question to yourself, Paul, if that's okay. Well, how would you sort of describe a sustainable station from your point of view? And what's your vision?
Well, at Jernhusen, well, we're a real estate owner. We own station railway real estate, so that's stations and maintenance depots, but also a lot of land around the railway that we develop. Our company's vision is to make a difference to people and the planet. So this aspect of working towards a sustainable future is part of our DNA and part of the things that we need to work with. In terms of the things dealing with the environmental aspects of sustainability, well, I think in today's business climate, there is no other way to go than to use to responsibly use materials, to design, to reduce your energy usage and handle waste and so on in the most sustainable way possible. So that's kind of a given in today's business environment. However, if we look at, well, how do we make these stations places that really help the rest of us go about in a more sustainable way? I think we need to look at three forces that should pull in the same direction, and the first one is the mobility offering that gathers at a place. A station is by definition a hub for different modes of transport, and the more modes of transport, the more choices we can offer the public, the travelers, the more visible we make the other choices than taking a private car is paramount to our success. So we need to make sure that all modes of transport get a place, that we welcome them, the old ones, the traditional ones, but the public ones, the private ones, the new ones. They all need to find a logical spot around that station building. So the outside of that station building is really important. The second part is, once you get people in there, you actually make them change their mode of transport. Instead of sitting in their comfortable car listening to the radio, they now have gotten off their bike or bus or whatever, and they get into a station building, and they maybe have to wait for a little while before they catch that train. That is then where we need to make sure that visit to the place where they are now is a pleasant one. That's where the physical environment comes into play. That's where the feeling of safety, security, feeling welcome, the aspect of service, food, maybe culture, those types of things come into play, so that you don't perceive that the time you spend inside that building as a waste of time. It should be easy to navigate, of course, but it should not purely be functional, as Johan so well pointed out. It should not be that hard functional environment. It should be a welcoming place. That's the second one. And the third one is then the environment that you have around that station, the city around that station. Where is that station? Is it in the city center, or is it on the outskirts of a city, or in the middle of nowhere? It plays an incredibly important role towards the success. What is this area around that station? is it attractive? Is it safe? Is it a place where people live, work, or go to enjoy themselves? If you don't manage that area around the station in a good way, you can have the best mobility offering, you can have the most fantastic station building in the world. It will not work because people don't want to be outside of that building. So these three forces really need to pull in the same direction. And that's where all of these different aspects that we can talk a lot more about come into play. How do you work with clever architecture? How do you work with the furnishing? What are the types of services and other attractions that you offer inside such a building? But then most of all, also, how do you make sure that it's not only at the place where you take the train, but of course it's still the place where you take a train. So it needs to be functional as well.
Yeah, quite agree. That's really interesting.
I agree. Can I add
Go
something
ahead.
to the Paul? Paul mentioned about surrounding to the station. What is around the station? It's a very, very important and clever because we should try to improve our small and medium station. Some in many places, this station are a little bit out of the city center, and we should cooperate with local authority at the stage of urban planning, because we should promote. We know what doesn't mean smart TOD, but we should promote smart neighborhood-oriented transit. This neighborhood should be oriented by the transit. Together we are stronger, and when we will separate, everybody loses. It's very clever what you're mentioning, Paul.
Yes, really. I have a comment there too on the smaller stations that you say, Arthur, and there it can often be a case if a local cafe, which may be the only service at that station, if that little cafe at the station can survive, thrive or not, and if it doesn't, the station sort of dies. So if you have a cafe, if you have something that people can gather around and have it enjoyable, it brings more. So if you can make that little station nice as well, the cafe will thrive and the rest comes and it builds around it. So there's so much to gain also from a society level, and making it the center of town.
Yes, definitely. Station without any offers is empty space only. People avoid this place and people disappear from this space and not feel good. Well-being going down.
But keeping these places vibrant is of course vital to the commercial success. And as a real estate owner, we live off the fact that people pass through our building. I mean, as a station owner, we don't sell train tickets. We don't earn money by having lots of people taking trains. We earn money by renting square meters to people who actually want to rent something, have their office in a station building, or sell coffee or food or do something else there. So we are really dependent on the fact that a lot of people want to come through that building. It is a public space, and that has its challenges because you don't really get to pick and choose whoever enters that building and what they do there. So you need to manage that, and that's once again where how you design the inside and how you cooperate with lots of actors will keep that place also socially responsible. I believe that most of us, and I guess people in the audience as well, probably recognize the kind of situations where the kind of automatic reflex and the reaction to having people loitering in the station is that, okay, well, now we're gonna take away the seats, or we're gonna install lots of barriers so people cannot lie down on benches, or we make we do lots of negative things to avoid a really small minority of people to do what they do, but we punish the big majority that we want to invite, and that is, I think, not the best solution, or at least not the first solution you should turn to. So it's really about understanding that surrounding and then working together with other stakeholders. It could be the city authorities, it could be it could be cultural organizations, it could be whatever, civil society, to manage the place. So it's not just about building something and then operating it. It is really feeling the pulse, nurturing it, loving it, and loving the people who use it.
Yeah, it's a great another great voice from you, Paul, because we should start to educate our staff. This is a place for manage. It's a very important. We should prepare this place for all people, not prepare a barrier because the smallest part using in different way. This is true.
Yeah. And talking to the point that Johan also made about the surprising respect that people show for a nice environment. We have in Sweden had an art exhibition. We had a cooperation with the National Museum, the National Art Gallery. And they had made an exhibition of public life, looking in their collection and then choosing paintings that kind of show different aspects of life in a public space. So it could, and it then invited a little bit about discussion about, breastfeeding. Is breastfeeding in a public place okay? How about violence? How about all these alcohol in a public place, and so on and so on, but telling these stories through historical art. That art exhibition was then displayed in a number of our railway stations in the form of banners that were hanging down from ceilings, or foils on glass windows, and so on. And surprisingly, for months and months and months on end, these pieces of art can sit there without anyone feeling the temptation to tag them or to cut them or to destroy them in some way. So it really gave us an incentive as well to really invest in a nice environment, because it in the long term it pays off in both in terms of passenger satisfaction and client satisfaction, but also in terms of running costs. It's a lot more fun to have a nice place.
So nice to hear. Yeah, Emily, I'm curious to hear about the reaction on sustainability and the sustainability actions that you take. So do you get reactions from passengers on this?
Yes. Well, obviously the spaces we design, I hope I've convinced you that the spaces gain both sustainability and attractiveness by, well, natural light is just a great example. You just like to be sitting on somewhere because you feel maybe sunshine in the winter on you. So obviously that's a very positive feedback loop. So sure, that's very interesting. The quality of space is there's a regular poll on our stations as well, run by SNCF Gare et Connexion. And one of the topics is just the place, and it counts for quite a lot, in fact, in global satisfaction. So that's what regularly appears. I wanted also to jump just on two things that you've both mentioned, Arthur and Paul. In this theme of building sustainable relationships with the neighborhood, two things to come to my mind. There's a great initiative by SNCF Gare et Connexion going on now, which is called 1001 stations. You probably heard of that. Okay, I see you nod, both of you. So it's a really great initiative where vacant spaces are just offered for project holders, and anyone can propose a project to be taken here. And obviously, it attracts people from the local communities. So of those 1001 spaces, I don't know how many have been invested by local communities now, but there are quite a few success stories, and it's very varied activities that have been taken there. It's a great example of how do you let the community come to you and express their needs. You're not guessing. You're just offering the place because for some reason it's a vacant place now. It can be just where the station chief used to live, and that doesn't make sense today. It's places like that. A great example. And the second thing I have in mind is obviously the forecourt is a very important area. It's the teaching area, and so many things can happen on this forecourt. So it's not always the property of, well, at least for SNCF in France, it's not always the property of the station. Sometimes it is, sometimes not. But so many things can happen there. It's, again, obviously a place where things can happen. It's a place that you can use to lower heat island effect and create agreeable spaces in the summer. It's a place where you can produce energy because one very effective way to place solar panels is on shades on parking zones, for example, because it's already artificialized place. You can also create the occasion to promote these other sustainable ways of transport, and in particular bikes. So we should make sure that the bike locking offer is correct, and you give you a chance that bikes are more used to come to the station. So I think the forecourt is a very interesting place in all those dimensions.
Very nice.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I just recalled a station that I was involved in Aix-en-Provence,
Okay.
where you actually bring out the heating in the winter and the cold in the summer in the station building through the seating. So then you don't have to heat the building as much because the heat comes close to people, or the chill comes close to people through the seating. So it's also an example of saving energy and making it more comfortable for the passenger at the same time.
Yeah. Sure, thank you. Yes, this idea of microclimate is very important because we want to make those spaces generous, amples. You want them to attract light, but at the same time, it's vast volumes, so you don't want to heat them or cool them in their entirety. So creating microclimates is a very important strategy. Yes, indeed.
Reacting to the idea of the 1001 stations and the small stations, it's a topic that we within the UIC Station Manager Global Group also we have a special working group dealing with small stations, and there are some really clever solutions out there involving the surrounding community. In once again in Sweden, as a commercial operator, if there is no income, it's difficult for us to remain the owner of such a building. So we have sold off a number of small stations to local actors who have a better chance of using and reusing that building, keeping it alive, and bringing some new users into it. And we have also seen fantastic examples of a couple, two private people who own a hotel and a restaurant across the street from the station, who then buy the small station building, turn it into an art gallery, and restore the building to its former glory. And then we support them by being a tenant of the waiting room, so we keep the station alive and support them with all of the access to whatever we have in terms of resources for the operational part. But the building itself remains alive, and I think that's also part of keeping a network of sustainable transport going. It's not only the big fantastic palaces, but it's also the small places that need to work, be alive, and be attractive.
Yeah, we discussed, as Paul mentioned, about 1001 stations. These examples in UIC, small station working group is very important, because actually almost 58 in my country, almost 60% running station is small. It's a big part of network, big part of our daily work. I can give you some example from my country. At the small station, we create, for example, a library, and local community are happy because there's a new space for them, and this station alive. As a result of research and innovation project which we conduct currently, we will build a new station in the northern Poland as a living lab, living laboratory, and this type of station will contain 3 types of waiting areas, because it's a special place. It's a place when we have a huge peak of passengers during the summer, only 3 months in Poland, unfortunately, and during the rest of the year, this place is almost empty. And how we thinking about how we prepare for this situation, how we can manage them, and the solution is 3 types of waiting area: small inside the building, and the little bit bigger near the platform under the roof, because it's northern Poland in Hel Peninsula. It's very popular winter place. And the second, we have long access road to the station, and this is owned by my company. And we prepare on this place, along this access road to the station, good quality public space for pedestrian and bicycle users, and of course people which would like to achieve the station by car can do it, but the car is a guest, because we prepare this place as a Vonerv, is a type of idea come from Netherlands. It's a good public space, and this good public space we prepare passenger information, and it will be additional place in during the summertime. And after the high season, this place will working for local community. Will be working for a local community. I hope next year this station will be ready to open. Because of COVID, we have some elements postponed, but probably we finished on time. And today I can invite you to to this place. Maybe it will be new type, yeah. But the inside the station, we create some innovation components which could be used in another places, because it will be components ready to use in other places, like technical work. But I can describe this project all day. I finished now.
It's great to hear about bringing in society into the station or around the station. And really, I think we can also learn from the shopping mall community. So shopping malls have a tough time in front of them with internet. And you will need something extra to go to a shopping mall. You will go there not just to buy a sweater. You will go there together with friends to have a coffee with friends and to have advice on that sweater. So it's something you will do together. And they are developing into I wouldn't say showbiz, but they're developing into the event business, into the experience business. And I think we're kind of there in railways as well. It's an experience to go that journey. It's an experience that starts, and it should start at the station. And if also taking the relation to the retail in the shopping mall, they have to think further than just the traditional shops and cafes. They have to think, like you say, bringing in other functions, the art gallery, the dentist, the little doctor office, the library, all these kind of functions that were formerly around the town square, the town center, will go into the shopping malls. And if we then for a little while just think of stations like shopping malls, maybe the really small ones only will have a few of these things, but still experience things and things that tie people to the place and make it enjoyable and make something to do while you're waiting. Just look at the art or have a coffee or well, borrow a book. And this it makes it a smooth journey. I'd also like to take a survey that I heard of. I can't give the reference like that, but I heard of waiting time is perceived as double the time of traveling time. So the waiting time you spend traditionally in a traditional, but maybe a little bit dull waiting area. Maybe it's cold, maybe it's not agreeable. It's perceived as double real time.
It's true.
If we can turn that around, if somebody's playing the piano in the station as the opposite of this, it will do the opposite. It will be perceived as shorter than real time.
Exactly.
I just say we've got sort of about 10 minutes left, and I just wonder if we could move the conversation to a slightly different theme around universal design. And how we make our stations more accessible, more inclusive, and more welcoming to a wider range of people. I wonder if the panel have got some experiences or some quite sort of practical advice about how to make our station spaces more inclusive. Does anyone want to put your hand up for the first to answer that question?
I can start.
Go ahead, Johan.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have a place for all in some way, it so much helps, and this means not only a different height of seating for elderly people or with and without backrests. It means really to have a place which is quiet, a place which is made to sit together, a place that is made to sit alone, facing outwards alone, facing inwards together. if you can have a playful area for the children, so where the children can play in a corner off the beat, where parents can feel safe about their children and sit next to them. This all is inclusive, really, and picking up on Paul's armrests, or really you can think of them as bob wire. If you put up bob wire to prevent people from lying down, or to prevent all kinds of things, it has the opposite effect of communicating safety. I can give an example actually from Paul's company, from Jernhusen and Stockholm Central Station. The very first area that I was involved in was a little space, a little waiting room on the top floor, where there was a lot of trouble with people dwelling, or more or less living there. And Jernhusen had a tremendous vision of making this place nice so that it would be taken by the passengers. Introducing a plant wall, introducing sound, good sound effects, nice seating, nice lighting, making it really the best place to be in the station. It worked. The plants are still there. It's 10 years ago.
We should remember about universal 7 universal design rule. It's very, very important. But this is a story about matching, not mismatching. Because if we these 7 universal principles are very, very clear, but not easy to apply in the real world. For example, equitable use, flexible in use, simple intuitive use, of course, size and space for approach and use, and low physical effort. This example of universal design. But I would like to mention about not official universal design principle, but the the next principle was formulated in the previous century by Konrad Kallecz. It's a principle on non-discrimination and the creation of equal opportunity to all. It's very important rule. We have a lot good examples. Not only in the newest research or newest article or newest books. For example, Danish architect Jan Gehl create many examples, many good examples which we can apply, adopt to our station. My Polish colleagues, Professor Maciej Błaszak, is the author. In my opinion, brilliant book, Things Are for People. There is not only about things, about space and place. We can, good example, American professor of social geography, Yi-Fei Tuan, and his work, for example, Space and Places. Space and Places, it means the perspective of experience. It's very clever example, in my opinion. And the one of newest book, David Sim, if I remember right, it's a member of Jan Gehl team, designer, wrote the book Soft City, Building Density for Everyday Life. We can use these good examples and rethinking about our approach, how to create, modernize our station, even station protected by law because it's heritage place, because it's heritage. It's optimistic, yeah. But because we often discuss about universal design, and I received opinion. Okay, it's very tough to implement. No, it's not. It isn't tough. It's only in our mind. We should want to implement.
Yeah, thank you. That's really nice, interesting thoughts on that, and especially that kind of positive, like, yeah, we've got, this is, it might be challenging, but that's the fun of it, isn't it? And isn't it? And this is the problem we've got to solve together. So, and that's what design and good architecture and engineering does, solves these challenges. Before I start to close, we do have one question from the audience, which would be interesting to get your quick point of view on. It's asking about whether we think, if you're, say, on a metro line or a metro network being a good example, what do you think about having the same design of all the stations? So having perhaps some sort of standardized design, or compared to having a variety of different designs and feels at different stations along a route. Well, then I can see sort of advantages for both. Have you guys got any sort of view on that kind of standardization versus variance in design? Paul, if you want to.
Yeah, well, living in a city where the subway network is considered the world's biggest museum, because every subway station in Stockholm is a piece of art. It is really, it is. You can actually go on Saturdays. You can go on a tour with a guide and visit subway stations, because they all look and feel different, and they surprise you. I think there's a lot to be said. If we talk about attractiveness, there's a lot to be said about, surprising people, keeping things exciting, instead of making a bland, thing that's a McDonald's type of subway station where everything is the same and you have no idea where you are if you happen to miss the sign. Then there are, of course, elements that should be recognizable in terms of wayfinding, these types of things, and in terms of features for accessibility and so on. You need to keep that to the higher standard and not confuse people. They should be able to expect certain things, but then you should always surprise them with something else.
Perfect answer to close a really interesting panel discussion today. So thank you so much to all of you as speakers and as panelists. I think it's been fascinating debates, and talking about both the sort of environmental sustainability and the fact that it's really a given that we use circular economy principles in the materials that we choose, that we design low carbon embodied buildings that also operate with energy efficiency, and that we can be really creative about how that happens, with the idea of these microclimates, and as well as kind of how we use natural light and things like that. But what we've been talking about a lot is the social sustainability side of things, isn't it? And how we sort of put that message of sustainability and sustainable mobility as an advert, because our stations are this great big billboard advertisement shop window for the stations, and how that really should shout sustainability around the whole city or the whole town, and really be an integral part of the material of that community in which it serves and involves them. And the most successful stations we've heard about today are those that really involve and integrate into the cities and communities that they work in. So and are just really high, and they're talking about high quality spaces actually are worth their while. So investing on really high quality, attractive, enjoyable places to be is worthwhile. It has a return on investment, and for the station, but in terms of operations, but also as the whole rail network and the city and businesses all around them. So really, really interesting broad debate. So I'll close that now and advise you, please, if you could join tomorrow. Also, there'll be a keynote speech at 1 p.m. all about intermodal collaboration. So please join that, and also 2 more sustainable mobility sessions that I'll be chairing tomorrow. So please also join those at 9 and at 4:30. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, audience, for your participation, and see you again soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.